Welcome, everybody, to a new episode of the Bold Take Podcast. I'm Austin Waiter. With me is probably one of the more excited Chicago Bear fans on the internet. That would be the Austin Hill. And you can tell based on the Steeler jersey and based on what we literally said in the college football episode, which, by the way, if you have not watched, it is out on YouTube. It's been out since this morning. Go give it a watch. We already have a comment on Austin talking about how great it was for Notre Dame to beat A&M. So they were very happy about that.
Good.
But that is out on YouTube now. Make sure you go watch that after this one, as this is our NFL season preview. And we look different from that episode because, well, this is recorded a day later. We'll talk about why we did that later on. But this is our NFL season preview. The season technically kicked off last night as we're recording this on Friday. And the main afternoon slate continues that Sunday. But nonetheless, we're going to preview the NFL here. And enough talking, Austin. I think me and you, both based on the offseason our teams are had, we're excited to see what's going to be on the field this year.
Absolutely. I'm excited to see the product Ryan Poles puts on the field. Hard Knocks was surprisingly interesting for myself. I don't usually watch it, and it's not really, I don't think it's going to be bad, but I just don't know if it's going to be my speed. And I don't really care to watch a show about everybody else's team. But the Bears were on Hard Knocks this year. It was a pretty fun season to watch. It was actually a cool in-depth look at kind of the way things operate from my favorite team. And so now I'm excited to see that product that they've clearly worked so hard to make, see what that looks like on the actual field.
Steelers, I guess I'm excited is the right word I would use for it. Russell Wilson's already questionable to play in the game against the Falcons, so we might see Justin Fields even earlier than we anticipated there. So maybe our bold take from Carter Valance about Justin Fields taking the starting job, he might be there a little bit quicker. But that's a quick look at our team. Speaking of it, we might as well give our expectations entering it, talking about our teams. Now, if you're joining us for the first time, based on my jersey, you can guess I am a Ravens fan. I'm kidding. No, I am a Steelers fan here. And like I mentioned, this man across from me is a Chicago Bears fan. Has been for a long time, all kinds of Chicago sports teams. So, sir, you already kind of hyped up about what you like from Hard Knocks. What are you looking forward to seeing about your Bears this season?
The big thing I really want to see from this team is kind of this new look offense. You got a new offensive coordinator in Shane Waldron coming over from Seattle. Obviously, you're bringing in Caleb Williams, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, DeAndre Swift, Gerald Everett. So I'm excited to see how these pieces kind of function together. A big thing that I'm also interested in is the offensive line. They didn't get super aggressive with the offensive line this offseason. They went out and traded for a couple lower tier guys, signed a couple lower tier guys, and drafted a couple guys in the late round. But they didn't do anything game changing or earth shattering to really help the interior part of that line. I think the tackles are pretty set. I've really liked what I've seen out of Braxton Jones these last 2 years. Starting out right, obviously looked really, really good as a rookie last year. So I think the tackles are set, but look, Tevin Jenkins is really inconsistent as far as injury is concerned, but when he's on the field, he's one of the better guards in the NFL. And then just have not been able to find any consistency at center and right guard. Nate Davis is supposed to be the right guard, and he's a fantastic, fantastic offensive lineman. But he was so, again, injured and just kind of busted last year and missed a lot of practice this offseason. It feels like we've seen more of him on the sideline in flip flops and a t-shirt than we have actually playing in a football game for these guys. Hoping to get him back. But center has really been our big issue for a very long time. Going back to when we first drafted Cody Whitehair as a center ages ago, transitioned him to guard, needed to move him back to center last year, and now we've cut him. So the offense, I think, is really the big question for me. The defense is super solid. It's full of veterans and talented youngsters. All they did was really kind of solidify this defense for me. So, yeah, offensively, I just want to see how these new pieces come to play. And if we're really going to see kind of a new look Chicago Bears offense compared to what we've seen the last couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I thought it was a great offseason for y'all. This was a uncharacteristic offseason for the Steelers in the fact that they actually made a lot of moves. And I have been known to say in the past with the Steelers, I can't wait for them to do nothing in the offseason except sign one or two free agents that are like, maybe will do good. But Omar Khan has come out, has been more aggressive in free agency, a lot more aggressive in the draft, addressing the O-line. Zach Frazier, Troy Fautanu both looked, I'm expecting to look very good to help out this O-line, especially as long as it means that Dan Moore Jr. is no longer starting on the offensive line. We can only hope. On the defensive side of the ball, I'm excited to see Peyton Wilson, the rookie from NC State. I really think he is going to be a beast. We have missed a hole at that linebacker spot ever since Shazier has been gone, unfortunately. But him and the addition of Patrick Queen, who, if you watched the Ravens-Chiefs game last night, was sorely missed for the Ravens last night. So I'm excited about it. The only thing I got to worry about is quarterback. I really don't know. I want to be positive about what each guy can bring, but I'm also concerned because when we signed Russell Wilson to a 1-year deal, we declined Justin Fields' 5th-year option. I wonder that if this doesn't work out, are we just literally starting all over in the QB room again? And I don't want this to become a trend where we start a whole new QB room every single year. So I'm hoping that we get a full answer at quarterback, but there are a lot of upgrades on this team. And I can tell you this, Austin, all I know is that no matter what, we're at least going 9-8 and either barely miss the playoffs or somehow sneak in that 7th seed as our worst bet. So I'm feeling pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Mike Tomlin, he's a sucker for consistency. What can you say?
Yeah, even if they went to a 30-game season, he would figure out a way to go 9-8. He would.
Yep.
But now that's a look at our teams. We're going to dive into some real quick about all the teams in the divisions before we make our picks on this show. And let's start in the NFC with the NFC East, Austin, the division that it's always a different winner, has been a different winner every single year in that division since 2004, I think. So it's early 2000s was the last time we had a repeat winner in that division. And of course, that winner last year was the Dallas Cowboys. And the whole thing we talked about all offseason, or we heard all offseason, was the Cowboys are going to go all in. They're going to go on to make a Super Bowl push this year. And now they're where they're at. So this is going to be an interesting year for Dallas. They still have some very talented pieces, but they made a lot of changes to this roster over the summer.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I really look at is kind of, it seems like they're confused on what to do in the running back room. A year ago, you let go of Ezekiel Elliott, and rightfully so. He was just not worth the money he was making. You kind of commit to allowing Tony Pollard to prove himself after the injury to really solidify himself as the top back. And then that doesn't happen. Tony Pollard doesn't have a terrible year, but he doesn't have a year warranting the money he probably could have gotten last year had he not gotten a major injury. And Ezekiel Elliott kind of bombed in New England. And that has led to a reunion with Ezekiel Elliott at running back, and now sending Tony Pollard off to Tennessee, or really he went via free agency. But look, I just don't think they did anything to help this team really out. They lost. It felt like to me they're losing a lot, and they didn't make a whole ton of effort. I mean, they hardly made an effort to bring back or to extend the guys on their team that are, the most crucial players, talking about CeeDee Lamb not really being a priority this offseason, which is an insane thing to say about your star receiver. Look, I mean, if you're looking to ship him off, that's fine, but you lose so much leverage when you say, yeah, we don't care. Who's going to trade for him now? They know you don't want him. They're not going to give you what you want. So obviously they ended up coming to an agreement on a contract. But I just think Jerry Jones has been extremely careless in the offseason building this team. Kind of just, saying, hey, for old time's sake, let's bring back Ezekiel Elliott, who was really bad last year. And when we need a number one back in Dallas, I just think they were careless in the way they acted and the things they said. I don't think chemistry is going to be in an all-time high. And obviously, they've kind of talked about it this offseason. Dak Prescott has got to answer some questions this offseason. He's raised a lot of questions. He just hasn't been performing at the level expected. That contract runs out either this year or next year. And so he's really got to prove himself if he wants to remain the QB of the Dallas Cowboys, especially now that they brought in Trey Lance. Even though the 5th-year option is declined, Trey Lance maybe doesn't start this year, but you like what you see kind of as a bench player. That's a guy you could resign on a small contract to come in and at least just get you over the hump until you figure out a long-term solution, but they seem to really like him in Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, don't forget about Dalvin Cook either. They're going with the
Yeah,
2016 running back room here in Dallas. I'm hoping Deuce Vaughn gets some action this year. That's who I want to
agreed.
see get some action. He's one of the few Cowboys I'd look at and say, if he does well, I'm happy. So, but no, you're absolutely right. There was no major all-in pushes there. And the Dak contract actually does expire after this season. So
Okay.
you're going into this year, basically, at least in my opinion, if you're Jerry Jones, where this team, kind of like some people think, might not make the playoffs. What happens to this roster? Do they blow up this roster? Do they let Dak walk in free agency? Do they fire Mike McCarthy like they probably should have done, or well,
Years ago.
shouldn't have hired him in the first place?
Yeah, that's true.
But there's just so many question marks. And, the defense to me is a big question mark because remember, Deron Bland suffered a severe injury during the preseason. He's out, I think, the first 6 weeks of the season. So that's another loss in the secondary. You got Trayvon Diggs coming off a serious injury as well. There's a lot of question marks with the Cowboys, which means very simply, they will either collapse under the pressure and struggle this year, maybe go 8-9, barely miss the playoffs, or they're going to somehow win this division, be a top 2 seed, and then hopefully lose to the 7 seed again, which would be really funny.
Yes.
But now the team that finished second in that division, the team that me and you have been high on for the last couple of years, the Philadelphia Eagles. Look, I'm going to be honest, similar to the Cowboys, this is a make or break year for the Eagles right now. After the collapse last year that happened and all the rumors going around of Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts not really getting along, you lose a lot of veteran pieces. Brandon Graham's going to retire after this year. I mean, it feels like Nick Sirianni is on the pressure to win with this group. And if not, I feel like this could be a plug that could be pulled very quickly if the Eagles struggle out the gate.
Yeah, I think something worth keeping an eye on is obviously where a lot of those key spots for veterans are kind of fading out for these Eagles, these longtime guys. Obviously, the offensive line is getting old. Jason Kelsey's already retired. But you look at, like you said, Brandon Graham retiring, Fletcher Cox retiring last year. So you've got to look at some of these young guys that they've been drafting. Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith. These guys are going to have to step up because it's about to be their time to lead this team. And like we said, they've been a good team the last couple of years. And if they do have a good season this year, then they're going to be expected to carry another good season next year. With guys retiring, next man up kind of mentality. But what I'm really interested to see with this team is they went out and they made a big time commitments at the coordinator positions. Look, let's be honest. This team lost its coordinators after its Super Bowl run, and clearly they were not the same. So going and getting veteran NFL head coaches, especially the Vic Fangio hire. I love Vic Fangio. Shout out 2017 Vic Fangio Bears defense or 2018 Vic Fangio Bears defense. Maybe the best defense that's ever been assembled. Cannot believe that Cody Parkey couldn't kick. Side tangent. But it's just, I think they made a good commitment to getting guys who are experienced, knowledgeable guys to run this offense, run this defense. But it's going to be about execution. Look, there was a lot of talk, like you said, not just about Sirianni and Jalen Hurts, but just chemistry issues in general in the locker room. AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts seem to be having trouble. AJ Brown seemed to have trouble with a lot of guys on the offense last year. So I'm hoping this team can snap it together and kind of realize and get back to what it was 2 years ago. I mean, this team was unbelievable 2 years ago in that run to the Super Bowl. And maybe, a bad penalty call away from winning it. So I like the Eagles. I think they've done the right things to get better, but it just comes down to execution the whole year. They were the best team in the NFL for the first 13 weeks or whatever. And then they dropped the ball right at the end. So it really is just going to be, can Sirianni get this team right? But I'm absolutely with you. If the Eagles have a slow start, Sirianni could be one of the first coaches gone because this is such a good team that they're going to look for somebody who can make this work.
Absolutely. And plus, it's always the talk with the quarterback position before the contract and the huge contract kicks in majorly with the roster. This is your best moments to compete as a team. And now Jalen's got that big contract and that'll start kicking in. You sign Saquon to a big contract. AJ Brown's going to get money. Devontae Smith. I mean, I could go on and on here. So yeah, pivotal season for them. The last two here, I wouldn't say it's a pivotal season. It is the start of something that hopefully goes well. And that we're going to start with the New York Giants here. And look, all the question marks about them. They let a lot of pieces go in the offseason. Xavier McKinney, Saquon Barkley, the main ones, but they brought in some talented pieces as well. Don't forget, Brian Burns acquired him in a trade from the Panthers. They got Malik Neighbors. Some people are saying was the best receiver in this draft. I mean, he's already been given the number one by the Giants, who no player has worn that in forever. So they're clearly high on him. But again, as it does every single year with the Giants, it comes down to Daniel Jones. This is the guy they chose over Saquon Barkley in those contract talks, and they believe in him. It is now time for him to step up, and I know it's going to be tough coming off an ACL injury, but they've got to show some fight this year before, I mean, if it doesn't work out this year, I mean, you're talking about complete blow up at the quarterback position. You can only defend a guy so long in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree. I think Daniel Jones, again, 2 years ago, really showed himself worthy of that contract. Obviously, if you just look at that season, he certainly earned it. But, he struggled last year. He got hurt. I agree with you. I think this is not necessarily a pivotal year for the Giants because I think a lot of the pieces they've assembled are guys that are going to be either good for the next couple of years or starting to get into their best years in the next couple of years. Even Brian Burns is a young defensive end. So I think for a lot of guys on this team and for this team in general, this is going to be kind of like a learning year and trying to kind of gel together. But I think for Daniel Jones, this is a massive year. If you want to be the quarterback of the Giants, you want to stay under this massive contract and not be cut this offseason, you've got to perform and show yourself as the leader of this team. If not, look, like I said, they've got a ton of great pieces. If they finish bad, top of this draft, they're going to draft somebody who's going to come in and benefit from having a lot of assets on this team. So I really think this is a big year for Daniel Jones to prove himself. He's clearly shown he's capable, but can he stay healthy and can he stay consistent?
Yeah, definitely for him, that will be the question, and just really the question for this Giants offense. The defense is going to keep them in a lot of games. It'll be interesting to see what that offense can do, taking that next step. And then our last team in the NFC East, the Washington Commanders. This is a team that is complete reset mode. Everything is reset. New owner, new GM, new coach, new franchise Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. We definitely haven't seen this before in Washington. I promise that. But look, no, there's a lot of good pieces surrounding Jayden Daniels, but at the same time, it's pieces that were elite in 2018 probably, but still solid. Bobby Wagner, you got Austin Eckler, Zach Ertz there. It's going to be interesting, but I will say we've seen a Heisman Trophy winner come into a really rough situation in Washington and turn this team around very quickly. And from what we saw in Jayden Daniels last year in college football, I don't think there's any doubt he has potential to do that here.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think they've done a good job giving him a good veteran foundation, especially like you mentioned with Zach Ertz and Austin Eckler. I think those are two guys that, obviously Zach Ertz hasn't been the same Zach Ertz over the last couple of years, but still a quality tight end, which is, always a quarterback's best friend. And then Austin Eckler is really one of the more talented backs in the NFL. Had a really down year last year, but I'm hoping that with a Washington offense that's not gonna have too many star players, that he'll get some opportunities passing or in the passing game and in the running game, which he really has shown his diversity. And I think having an option like that, you talk about it, tight ends, running backs, those are the safe options for a quarterback. You really get those solid. And then you've got a guy like Terry McLaurin at wide receiver. There absolutely could be some big stuff happening for this offense. But like you said, it's a matter of kind of how they use Jayden Daniels, because even when a guy looks like a home run pick, mismanagement can really spoil a quarterback. We saw it with Robert Griffin III. Obviously, who you were mentioning earlier in this segment. But yeah, so obviously you can't just, he's a home run pick. That's it. We've done it. You've got to protect the guy. You've got to take care of him. Fortunately, they won't have Jay Gruden trying to completely tank him to get Kirk Cousins in the game.
Very true. But don't forget the big thing that people are talking about. Cliff Kingsbury, remember, is now the offensive coordinator in Washington. And it'll be interesting to see what he will do for Jane Daniels during his rookie season. But yeah, we'll come back to the NFC East later on. Let's now move over to the NFC North. And oh boy, what a division this is going to be this year. We've already talked a bit about what we're expecting from the Bears, so we'll kind of move past them. Let's move to the team that won this division last year and somehow, some way kept their offensive and defensive coordinators from leaving, the Detroit Lions. And listen, the Lions, I never in my life have I ever gone into a season where I'm like, the Lions, if they win less than 12 games, this season's a disappointment. And this is really where they're at now. The talent is there. They got a bunch of great pieces. They got a great draft again, getting a great corner to help them out there in Terrion Arnold. I mean, I'm expecting big things from Detroit this year, as is a lot of people in the NFL.
Yeah, just some huge upgrades. Look, this team knew what it needed to do. It needed to make some improvements. Because what they were winning that game against San Francisco for a while, were they not?
24-0, 24-7. It was They were dominating them.
So, they just got to execute a little bit better. But we talked about this when it happened, once we finished up the coaching carousel, about these coordinators. But I really want to reiterate it right here when season's about to start. These coordinators sticking around for another season when they were the number one option for a lot of teams, not just at coordinator positions, but at head coaching positions. For them to stick around with the Lions, that shows these guys know they've got a job they need to finish. They're going to come out and they're going to play hard. And that is so important to see these guys stick around knowing they need another year to make some magic happen. The Lions are a scary team. And like you said, anything below 12 wins is probably going to be a disappointment for this team. How hard they've gone in to build this team, how successful they've been, keeping the coordinators. This has a recipe for another NFC Championship run.
Have NFC Championship, and who knows, maybe something beyond that. You never know. But that's right. Ben Johnson, I mean, Aaron Glenn, I could kind of understand because the Lions defense kind of fell off near the end of the year. But Ben Johnson, somehow not a head coach anywhere. I don't understand how that could have happened. I don't know if something went wrong during the coaching process, or he really just decided, I'm coming for one last all-in push. He is going to be one of the top candidates for a head coaching job after this season, regardless of how the season plays out for the Lions. So, yeah, great to have those coordinators back. And another team that is looking to maybe keep a rise going, that's the Green Bay Packers. I know a team that has been a rival with the Bears, not this man's best friend in the world. Of course, they signed Jordan Love to a gigantic contract this season, the richest in NFL history. I wish I got that level of money for only 1 year of production. That's all I'm going to say. I mean, if we only got that level of money for 1 year of the Bull Take podcast, think of where we'd be at right now, Austin.
Yeah.
I mean,
I probably wouldn't be doing it anymore. Probably be on a vacation somewhere.
We might be at our beach houses somewhere. I mean, who knows?
I'd invest that money and I would never work another day in my life.
Yeah, but no, the Packers, they went out, they made some good moves in free agency. Number one, bringing in a guy like Josh Jacobs to run the ball. Of course, losing the heart and soul of the team, Aaron Jones, to the Vikings, that's a big loss there. But you take a look at what they were able to get in the secondary. Xavier McKinney from the Giants, that was a really big get for that secondary. And look, they are going to compete. There are some people who like this Packers team as a sneaky favorite to somehow win this division. And listen, I know it'll be hard, but in your unbiased opinion, is there a legit chance for this Packer team to make a deep run this year?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. Look, they've got the pieces there. They made a good run, and it came down to some rookie mistakes. You had a young kicker who missed some kicks. Obviously, I think they went and replaced him now this offseason. So you've made an upgrade there, or at least you deem it as an upgrade. And your quarterback, it's his first season playing, and he tried to force a ball. He's trying to make a big play, tried to force a ball in a tight window. interception to lose the game. Look, that's stuff that can be built on. Obviously, that's putting the right foot forward there and moving on. So from Jordan Love, I expect him to be better than he was last year. I expect him to learn from some of those mistakes, be a little more cautious with the way he throws the ball, especially with how talented he is moving, running without, having to throw the ball. If he tucks that ball and takes off for 5 yards, gets out of bounds, that's what an NFL veteran would have done there. And so now with that experience, seeing that situation, that's not going to happen again. And so I think that's a huge improvement for them. But I like really them solidifying this secondary with a guy like Xavier McKinney, because they really need help over top at safety. I don't know if it's going to be a repeat from last year, but Jair Alexander had the worst season of his entire football career last year. He could not guard a soul. Even in the Bears matching up against a guy like Darnell Mooney, and I love Darnell Mooney, but he's not an All-Pro guy. He's not a Pro Bowl guy, and you're talking about a guy in Jair Alexander who 2 years ago was an All-Pro at corner, and he just could not contain anybody. So if that's going to be the problem, you obviously need talented safeties over the top to kind of go in and cover that. And they lost a guy like Jonathan Owens to the Chicago Bears. Look, Jonathan Owens wasn't necessarily the heart and soul of this defense and an every snap player, but look, they needed to replace some depth in their safety core. And obviously, Xavier McKinney to Jonathan Owens, that's a huge upgrade for them. Going to be absolutely massive for them to solidify that secondary. I really, really like it. But no, I'm not thrilled about the Jordan Love contract. I think he's good. And look, their hand was really forced. They pinned themselves in a spot. They didn't play him for so long that his first year is, the second to last year on his contract. So yeah, they pinned themselves in a corner. I think, hindsight's 2020. We'll all say, if he turns out to be bad after this past year, we'll all say, oh, why would you do that? But I think in the moment you had to. You can't afford to lose your quarterback. But it is just a sickening amount of money to a guy who only played one season as a starter. And so you never know how it pans out. Obviously, for the Packers, I'm hoping it doesn't pan out because I do not like the Packers. Nothing against Jordan Love. But I do think that there's a really good chance that this team makes a run in the playoffs this year.
Yeah, there definitely is a chance for them, I think, no doubt. But let's get to the last team here and just what we will say has been the most cursed team of the NFL preseason up to this point. That's the Minnesota Vikings. I would say I'd preview this team, but there's really nothing to say other than they're cursed. JJ McCarthy out for the year. Jordan Addison, all kinds of problems off the field and also dealing with injuries. You got pretty much Justin Jefferson on that offense and Aaron Jones. That's it. Their quarterback this year, it looks like it's going to be Sam Darnold. Shout out to him, Bold Take podcast legend. If you know, you know.
Yep.
But there are going to be interesting things that are going to happen, especially to me, on this Vikings defense. They lost to Nell Hunter. They made some different chances there. Of course, basically swap with the Texans, got Jonathan Grenard to kind of replace him. They still have some guys like Harrison Smith in that secondary. I mean, look, the Vikings, I'm going into the season with no expectations for them. They could get to 7 wins, and I'd be like, that's a good season for them. They could they could finish with 3 wins. I'd be like, you know what? I can understand how they get 3 wins. It's going to be a weird year for the Vikings.
Yeah, I think the Vikings are honestly done for this year. I hate to say that, but they've just been marred by tragedy and by just straight up bad luck. You really hate to see what's happened in Minnesota this offseason. And they have high hopes for Jordan Addison, and he's having these issues off the field. There just aren't many bright spots. The big thing for me is I think it'll be fun to see Sam Darnold kind of get another chance at starting quarterback. Look, he just hasn't been that great in the NFL, and I was never high on Sam Darnold. But, man, you got to use this year as an audition tape. Prove to somebody somewhere that you're worth being a starting quarterback, or at least a highly regarded second string guy. Um, that's really all I can say is he's going to have Justin Jefferson. Hopefully, TJ Hawkinson's able to come back rather quickly this season. And, having Aaron Jones. So there's some pieces on that offense that could at least allow for a guy like Sam Darnold to try and revive his career. But for the Minnesota Vikings, I just don't have any expectations for them. I think winning any games is just a plus. I don't think they'll go winless, but I think every game you win, you just take that for what it's worth and don't take it for granted.
Yeah, definitely for them. And of course, we wouldn't be remiss without saying rest in peace to Kyrie Jackson, of course, over the offseason as well. Yeah, let's see what Minnesota can do this year. It will be interesting to see there. Now let's move to the NFC South, which I call the land of the mid. There is a lot of mid teams here. And let's start with the one who came out as the king of the mid last year. That's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Really no major additions. The big thing for them this offseason was they signed back the key guys. Baker Mayfield got paid. Mike Evans got paid. They did lose some guys on the O-line to retirement, so that could be a question mark going into this year. But it kind of feels like they're trying to run this back from last year because they know no matter what, this division is going to be incredibly competitive.
Yeah, and they really put up a fight in the playoffs, which I was super impressed with. But I like this mentality of running it back, getting the key guys back. And look, you want to talk about what I was just talking about with Sam Darnold. Maybe you think I'm crazy about Sam Darnold maybe finding a career resurgence in Minnesota. This is exactly what Baker Mayfield did last year. He signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers team that did not have really that many expectations. People thought, well, they've still got some of that championship core from a few years ago. Maybe they can be the team that prevails in this division. But this division is always wide open. All four teams have a chance at all times to win this division and make the playoffs. So it wasn't a surprise there. But look, he went out and he played like the Baker Mayfield of old, and shined and earned himself that big contract in Tampa Bay to stick around and be their guy. I don't think that Sam Darnold will necessarily have that kind of eye-opening shell-shocked year, but it's possible and it can happen. And Baker Mayfield's a great example of that. The thing I was really excited about for them, and also a little not excited about, was them bringing back Mike Evans, because I knew the Bears were going to be big players in Mike Evans if he could actually make it to the open market, which technically he didn't. But really, he spent most of that time talking to Tampa Bay and ended up coming back. But them bringing him back was huge because basically from the mid-season point when they shut down contract talks, it looked like Mike Evans was going to be playing somewhere else next year. And he's been one of the most sensational wide receivers in NFL history. I think the only receiver to start his career with however many seasons he's been playing now, 1,000-yard receiving seasons. Nobody else has
lost track at this point.
Yeah, every season of his career has been a 1,000-yard season. Nobody else can say that. So I think it makes so much sense to bring him back. And look, if you're looking to compete and you're not looking to rebuild to get a new franchise quarterback because you've got Baker Mayfield, I think it makes sense to spend the money, bring back the key players, and keep trying to make runs. And I think that this team could really rise above the mid and maybe win 10 or 11 games now that they've had a year together.
I think so. Now, by the way, this is his 11th season coming up. So it's 10 seasons of 1,000 yards, which is just incredible. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But now let's move to a team that had a lot of very, very good changes this offseason. That's the Atlanta Falcons. Look, the past 2 years, me and you both said if this team wanted to at any point compete for a division title, they would have won it the last 2 years. The problem is Arthur Smith was there. And the good news for the Falcons is he is now with the Steelers. I hope he doesn't bring that same sort of issue to the Steelers. But they brought in Raheem Morris. They brought in Kirk Cousins. They brought in a competent staff that wants to hopefully use Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson. They want to use this defense. They acquired a lot of good pieces, traded for Matthew Judon this preseason. They, of course, signed Justin Simmons, already with Jesse Bates in the secondary. They made a lot of big moves this offseason to help them out. And still, the thing all people can talk about is them drafting Michael Penix in the top 10 in the NFL draft. But this is going to be a team that, like you mentioned, they could maybe be like Tampa Bay and maybe rise from the mid of this NFC South.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that it could definitely. I think that it's probably going to be a fight between Atlanta and Tampa Bay to win this division this year. But look, I'll touch on it real fast. The Michael Penix move is mind-boggling. Not because I don't think Michael Penix is a top 10 draft pick this year. I actually love the pick itself. I don't love signing Kirk Cousins to a massive contract that takes Michael Penix till he's 27 or 28 years old. To where if Kirk Cousins starts that entire contract, that would be the first time he's playing as an NFL quarterback. And then he'll be due another contract too. I mean, that's a huge investment. That's my only issue with it. But otherwise, they made a ton of upgrades. It really stung to see Atlanta swoop in and steal Matthew Judon in Hard Knocks. Because I don't know how much you watched Hard Knocks if you did. But there's I think it was the last episode of the episode, or not the very last episode, but either episode 3 or 4. Eberflus, Poles is on the phone with New England. This is what we're gonna do. They've got it in place, and New England says, "Okay, give us a minute to shop it around." Into the next day, and Atlanta swoops in and offers that 4 or that 3, and I think Poles' offer was no more than a 4. And so that sucked to see because Eberflus had kind of accidentally leaked it to the media that we were trying to trade for a big pass rusher. And it really sucked to see that, yeah, we almost had Matthew Judon. But I think they made some huge upgrades with Judon. Like you said, Justin Simmons on the defense. This defense is going to be really, really good this year. Can Kirk Cousins lead this offense? Can they unlock Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson? I hope so. This is one of the biggest disappointments over the last couple of years is Atlanta just trying not to compete. It's just been mind-boggling to watch. Now, hopefully with some competent coaching, this team can fight for a winning record and a playoff spot.
One can hope so. If not, I mean, look, let's just face the fact that franchise is cursed if they can't.
Yeah.
Let's move to a team who, is the king of the restructuring of contracts. That is the New Orleans Saints. Look,
sick.
They didn't bring anything big in. They did, besides Chase Young, they really didn't cut a lot of pieces. They just keep on restructuring deals on this team. And it's basically the exact same team. And this is the definition of a mid team. This is a team that will probably win 7 to 8 games and win enough to barely miss the playoffs, but not get a high enough draft pick where they can get an elite player. I mean, they're stuck there.
Yeah, I hate to do this to my buddy Trevor, but man, they're just look again. I'll say it. I say this. This is something I say every season preview. I would love to hire the Saints accountant. That dude is a wizard. They come into the offseason $40 million over the salary cap, and all of a sudden they restructure 2 or 3 contracts and they have $10 million to spend. I don't know how they do it, how they get plus $50 million in an offseason, but he is a financial wizard. However, the guys that they're restructuring are starting to get old, and this is why some teams start cutting ties with players under those big contracts. Look, sometimes restructuring works, but we're getting to the point where some of these guys are really aging out, and the Saints have just been so they're just they want to stay the same. They want to have the same guys because look, let's be honest. 5 years ago, when they were keeping those same guys, they were right there, close to an NFC championship, close to a Super Bowl. Run it back with these guys and add a couple little pieces to make some minor improvements, and maybe we can make the Super Bowl this year. But now we're getting to the point where they're slipping further and further away from even having a winning record, further and further away from the playoffs. And now we're getting to the point where maybe it's time to start rebuilding a little bit. Man, it's just a shame what's happened in New Orleans because Drew Brees should have an MVP trophy and more than one Super Bowl ring. Especially, losing to Case Keenum in the playoffs. And losing to the Rams on that awful call. Look, it's not entirely all their fault, but it's time to start parting with some guys and time to start rejuvenating this team and building them back into a contender.
I mean, you know it's bad. Like if you played the Madden 25 trial like I did, the free trial, if you went in to do a Saints franchise and you went to the salary cap, it was like negative 20 million before anything even happened there. So, I mean, it's such a bad situation. And what's worse is whenever you try the restructuring contracts like them, it didn't even work this year. So I don't even know how it's good. They're gonna pull a miracle out and probably do it again next year, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. Oh boy. Okay, but now let's talk about the team who look, they can only go up from last year. That's the Carolina Panthers, right? They can't it can't be any worse than last year, right, Austin?
Some of us hope that it can because some of us have would like to see that as high as possible.
That's true. You do have a second round pick still from the Panthers. So, but I mean, this team, look, new coach Dave Canales. I think he'll do really good there. He developed Baker Mayfield, rejuvenated his career. Now he's coming in trying to get Bryce Young comfortable in his second season here. And look, I know some people may look at it as a good and a bad thing. I think it's really good that Bryce Young played his whole rookie year. I think it's really good for him, even though
Agreed.
it was absolutely horrible. Worst thing that could have happened record wise and with the number one pick, obviously. But it needed to happen. I saw Peyton Manning talk about it. First year in the NFL for him, he went 3-13. He threw 28 interceptions, still the rookie record. Peyton Manning holds the rookie record for interceptions, folks. So sometimes playing that full year is the right thing for him. So I'm hoping that could lead to maybe some good steps for him. I mean, they brought in Deontay Johnson to help him out. Jonathan Brooks, they drafted him. The offensive line, they paid a lot of money for guys. Robert Hunt was one of the big ones. I mean, I'm interested to see what this offense can do, but this defense, I really, really don't have a lot of hope for because obviously losing Brian Burns and you brought in Jadeveon Clowney to try to replace him. The offense, if they want any chance of maybe getting to improve this year, this offense has to be better than what it was.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's kind of the hope is that your number one pick quarterback will take that next step and cause this offense to grow. But look, the big thing I'll say is I think there's some upside and some potential, but I wouldn't expect this team to be much better than it was last year. I just don't love this defense. And if they can't stop anybody, they're just not going to win football games. But I like the Dave Canales hire. My big thing is, are they going to give him the chance to develop the team? Look, Frank Reich came in last year, and I am a Frank Reich guy. We talked about it last year. He didn't. Nobody signed that Panthers contract expecting that they had the pressure of making the playoffs or having a winning record. That was completely unfair to do to Frank Reich. It's really just disgusting. It just goes to show the mismanagement of the Carolina Panthers over the last, I would say, probably 10 years since they went to the Super Bowl. It's just been beyond baffling to see them kind of reason out some of these moves, even when they went and let go of Cam Newton. Look, maybe Cam Newton wasn't still in the prime of his career, but he was the star of this team, and he came back after they cut him, and he was still the star of the team. That's the type of situation they were in. They've traded Brian Burns and Christian McCaffrey for absolutely nothing. They gave up the house and more to get Bryce Young, and maybe he'll pan out to be the star, but he's going to have to be Tom Brady to outweigh the value of what the Chicago Bears got in that deal. Even if Caleb Williams is a bust, DJ Moore is fantastic. Tyreek Stevenson has been fantastic. We got Torrey Taylor as a result of that. Keenan Allen, some picks we got in that draft or in that trade were shipped to the Chargers for Keenan Allen. The haul is insane there. But if Canales gets the chance to coach and develop this team, I think they have a chance to steadily improve. I don't think they're going to be very good this year.
Mike mentioned with the ownership there, David Tepper. Let's not throw drinks on fans this year. Let's not go into a business and take the hat off of the person working there. Let's not say that we wanted to draft another quarterback in a public press conference. Yeah, like I said, it can't be as bad as last year, right?
Yeah.
It can't. If it is, I don't know what to say at this point. But now let's move on to the NFC West here. And look, let's just be real upfront. The Niners are the favorite in this division. They re-signed Trent Williams, re-signed Brandon Ayuk. This is a team that should be in the Super Bowl once again, or at least in the NFC Championship game again. No excuses. I mean, let's just make it really simple here, Austin. There's no need to do a full preview. They've gone all in. This has to be the year it works out, because if you look at their cap space and their cap situation for next year, when they still got to pay Brock Purdy, I mean, this has to be it.
Yeah, I completely agree. Not much more to say there.
I agree. So let's move to a team now in the Los Angeles Rams. They obviously had the biggest departure of the offseason, Aaron Donald retiring. Look, we both agree. We both had, I think if I'm correct, we both had Jared Verse going to the Rams in our mock drafts. Yes. We think he was a great piece to replace him. But obviously it comes down to what they actually do on that defensive line. Aaron Donald has carried that defense since he got to the Rams his entire career. Now other guys have to step up. Look, this offense with Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, they're going to be fine. The offense will be fine. It's who's going to step up on this defense.
Yeah, they got rid of Jalen Ramsey a couple of years ago, and so the secondary obviously hasn't been the same. And now the defensive line is, not in bad condition, but you lose the greatest interior defensive lineman and one of the greatest defenders of all time. That's certainly going to be hard to replace. I expect this team to still be good and still be competitive, but I think at least for the beginning of the season, they're going to struggle a little bit with not having that rock on defense. I think the defense is going to be a little bit worse. They're not going to be able to lean on it as much. And I think in this first season without Aaron Donald, that's going to catch them by surprise, and they're going to lose a couple games just because that defense can't keep a hold on it. But either I think guys are going to step up, including Jared Verse, or they could maybe even go out and make a trade to try and help improve this team at the halfway point. But I expect this to be a good Los Angeles Rams team.
Yeah, same here. And don't forget, they signed Cameron Curl as a safety in free agency. They brought in Tre'Davious White as well. And hopefully, let's all hope Tre'Davious White gets a full season of action, because we know how good he is when he gets a full season of action.
Absolutely.
But now let's talk about the Seattle Seahawks, the team that made one of the more shocking departures of a coach with Pete Carroll, the man who led them to their only Super Bowl title. They let him go. They hired Mike Macdonald, and look, Mike Macdonald is a defensive coordinator. What he did with the Ravens was phenomenal. There are so many good defensive pieces in Seattle for him that this defense should carry this year. The thing that's going to question it is, number one, how will Geno Smith do again? Number two, can Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet stay healthy running the football? And number three, how will this offensive line work out? They have a couple of pieces, but it's still some question marks there. So to me, the defense is going to carry, unlike the Rams, this defense is going to carry the Seahawks throughout most of the season. But if we get Geno from 2 years ago, they could potentially maybe be up there with the Niners if we get that type of Geno.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you. And I think we're going to see a better version of Geno. I'm curious to see if they can get Jackson Smith-Njigba more involved in this offense. And look, he was a great piece for them. He's going to be a great piece for them. But I just don't think they took enough chances going deep to him and just trying to get him more involved in the offense. Look, DK's great, but DK draws a lot of attention. And I think if they would start using him as not necessarily only using him as a decoy, but using him on some plays just as a decoy and allowing that extra attention to find somebody else, I think they definitely thrive. And obviously, I know that I'm not some football genius, and it's not that simple. I get that, but I feel like they've got to get Jackson Smith-Njigba more involved. They've got guys like Tyler, and even get Tyler Lockett more involved. They've really got to lean on some of these other guys in the passing game, especially with how talented this wide receiver core really is when you look at it. They've really got to get some of these other guys involved and have some have some big outputs from them. And I think that's going to help Gino kind of thrive when he's got more options and more guys succeeding.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that'll be fun to see for them, and a team that is also looking to kind of build off of what they had some success last year. The Arizona Cardinals. Look, they were a team, let's just face it, last year, talent-wise, they were terrible. Absolutely terrible. No Kyler Murray until the end of the season. But the one thing they did for Jonathan Gannon, that team played as hard as they could, and they competed with some really talented football teams all season long. So listen, they just got to get more talent into the building, and they got Marvin Harrison Jr. in there. They made some good additions. Kyler's going to be back for a full season. I mean, there's optimism for the Cardinals to continue to build off of it if they continue to play as hard and as well as they did last year when no one really gave them a chance.
Yeah, I think the thing that I've been most in love with, and I think that they've done best for themselves this offseason, and really at the end of last season, was really kind of solidify their support for Kyler Murray. I think that's been the best thing for him. I think Kyler Murray's had not necessarily a great career as a Cardinal, but he's been as good as he could have been. He's not holding them back. And going out and trying to reset at quarterback, I don't think is the best strategy for this team. So I like that. And look, when we were looking at the end of that Cliff Kingsbury era, it looked like maybe the Cardinals were going to move on from Kyler Murray and go in a different direction. But now with a new coaching staff coming in, and they want this guy. He's a veteran. He's talented. It really could be exciting. And now we get a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't know what to expect from this team because there still are a lot of new pieces, and it still isn't one of the more deep, talented teams in the NFL. But they've made some improvements. They're going to get a full year of Kyler Murray. They're going to be better. I just don't know how much better. I certainly don't think they'll be contending for a playoff spot this year.
Yeah, that would be the biggest of upsides if they could this year. But now,
Yeah.
before we move to the AFC, in case, like we mentioned, Ravens and Chiefs was last night. We're going to talk a bit about that game. Of course, the Chiefs winning by an inch, literally, against the Ravens, 27-20. And listen, the difference in this game, at least to me, Austin, was this Ravens team looks completely different from what they did last year. Mike McDonald gone. That secondary was an issue. The play calling defensively was not there. Number two, Lamar Jackson just could not throw the football down the field. And the last thing, their offensive line struggled in that game overall. And I mean, oh, we got a flag on the play. Illegal formation, Austin. We got illegal formation there. I
Yeah.
mean, that was the difference in the game. The Chiefs didn't really, I don't want to say dominate. The Chiefs just didn't screw up like the Ravens did.
Yeah, and there are people complaining about the flags, and I do think there was a big thing about flags in this game, and obviously it's something that people notice more and more in these Chiefs games. And but I'm not going to make it about that. The only one that really bugs me to my core, that just bothers me, is the Steve Spagnuolo timeout. And why this one bugs me so much is because with all this other stuff, it's up to interpretation. With illegal formation, it's up to interpretation. Pass interferences and holdings, some penalties that the Chiefs have maybe had gone their ways and in the past. That stuff, is so objective, and it's up to the officials' interpretation. One thing that is up to absolutely nobody's interpretation is only the head coach can call a timeout. And I don't know if you know this, but Steve Spagnuolo looks absolutely nothing like Andy Reid. Not even a passing glance could you be like, oh, that's Andy Reid calling the timeout. And then on top of that, so what? You grant the timeout. I get it. Accidents happen. What has to happen? A penalty flag has to come out. That's how these things work. Instead, they just said, Steve, don't do that again. That's the only one that bothers me because the Chiefs clearly violated a rule. It is the letter of the law. There is no interpretation, no if and or buts about it. The fact is, only a head coach can call a timeout. That's it. And then when they made the mistake, they didn't punish the Chiefs. So instead, what happened? They get a timeout, and Baltimore gets nothing. Andy Reid didn't call that timeout. And guess what? Why were the Chiefs calling a timeout? They were out of formation. A touchdown may happen on that play. You've got to at least throw the penalty flag. I get it. Nobody's perfect. And that's why with these timeout nuances that you have with all these rules about timeouts, sure, sometimes timeouts are going to accidentally be granted when they're not supposed to people they're not supposed to. But when that happens, that is why there are penalties in place for when a mishap with the timeouts occurs. That's the only one I didn't like. Otherwise, I thought, like you said, Lamar kind of struggled throwing the ball this year. And I don't think, like, look, I'll be honest, I fell asleep about halfway through the third quarter. But from the games that I watched, I know that they've tried to go more of a passing offense, and Lamar really thrived stepping up into that new role. But I don't feel like they trusted Derrick Henry enough in the second half in what was a close game. Um, and so I think that the Ravens have some things to improve on. Sure, maybe officiating wasn't the greatest, but I definitely think that the Ravens could have won this game, even with everything that happened. They almost did win this game with everything that happened. So I think the Ravens have to be better. Lamar wasn't bad, but he's, like you said, he struggled throwing the ball down the field. And that play where the ball gets to Zay Jones and he's wide open, he's got to see that. He's got to see that. I saw in the post-game interview, he said that he did not mean to throw it to Zay Jones. He didn't even know Zay Jones was supposed to be there. I wish he had known that was supposed to happen. And he even said, I wish I'd waited an extra second to see him step into that spot. But it's just stuff like that. He's got to get a little bit more confident, and his offensive line has to get better at protecting Lamar. I know they're young, but if they want to keep competing, they've got to have an offensive line like they've had the last 5 or so years, a solid offensive line that helps keep Lamar clean.
I mean, listen, I couldn't believe. I mean, I almost was like, my jaw almost hit the floor when I saw Zay Flowers. When I saw the ball just go right by Zay Flowers. I mean, even my mom, who was halfway paying attention, was like, "How did he miss him?" I'm like, "I don't know how he missed him." So yeah, that's got to be what they got to work on. Yeah, by an inch, Isaiah Likely. If you were just maybe a size smaller on your shoe, that might have been a touchdown, maybe.
Cut your toes off.
But look, if that's the first game of the season, obviously, hopefully, great things can continue. Let's now quickly go through some of these other AFC teams. The Buffalo Bills, we're going to start in the AFC East. And look, Austin, your Bills, you're the Bills supporter on here. They made a lot of moves this offseason to get rid of some pieces in there. And they brought in some cheap replacements, brought in Keon Coleman at wide receiver. Look, this is a year where, I'm gonna be honest with you, probably the most wide open this AFC East has been since the Bills started to take over.
Yeah. Look, I know this is a Bills podcast. Every year I do the same thing. I pick the Bills to win the Super Bowl. That's just a known fact. But look, it was shocking to see how many people they really parted with. But that's the stuff that happens when you get into these huge quarterback contracts.
Heard
Look,
from the Saints.
yeah, and they don't have the Saints accountant, so they really double-edged sword. But I was surprised at the sheer amount of people that they let go. But I think as far as the receiving core, I like what they did. I feel like they had Stephon Diggs and not really a whole lot else. With this receiving core, they go out and they get Keon Coleman. They get a guy like Curtis Samuel. They still have Khalil Shakur. I like the way this receiving core looks. I think it's a little more fleshed out and a little bit more talented right now. Who knows? Maybe they'll all come out. None of them will be able to catch, and I'm an idiot. But I think overall there's more overall talent as opposed to not just having that big name in Stephon Diggs. The defense is really where I'm worried. They let go of Tre'Davious White, let go of Micah Hyde, let go of Jordan Poyer. And those were the faces and the heart and soul of this defense, the leaders. And they just didn't do a great job to me replacing in the secondary. They're going to leave it up to a lot of young guys who they drafted and they've trusted, and a couple of veterans they got on some cheap deals. I just don't know if it's going to be enough. The secondary is the biggest issue, and I just don't know if the Chiefs are going to get many stops with their secondary. So, or not the Chiefs, the Bills. Slipped my mind there. But yeah, I think that I like the Bills' offense. I think the defense is going to struggle, and that could cost them some big games.
Yeah, definitely. Don't forget Matt Milano, star linebacker. He suffered an injury. He's going to be out most of the season. So another key
True.
piece on defense that's going to be out. But now let's move to the Miami Dolphins, who look similar to some of the other teams. Austin, let's just make it simple here. We know what this offense is going to do. They scored 70 points last year. We know what they can do.
Yeah.
It is going to come down to this defense and just being able to finish a season. Similar to many coaches, December has been Mike McDaniel's undoing in his time at Miami. If they can get this defense together and just finish a season, they could make some noise. Those are the only things that they need.
Yeah, I'd like to see this team lean on Devin Achane a little bit more this season. Look, I know they like to throw the ball, and I know Achane and everybody else really good hands, really fast. They like to get him out on these pass plays. Tua's got a great arm. The biggest issue, you talk about getting into December, that's what they struggle. Part of that reason is they got to play a lot of teams that play in the cold, cold weather in December come playoff time. And look, sometimes it snows, sometimes it's cold. A little bit harder to throw and catch the ball in those situations, and their run game just hasn't been what it needs to be. I think this team needs to take a little bit more pride in their run game, trust their run game a little bit more, and that's going to help their offense. As far as this defense is concerned, lots of injuries all over that defensive line. I don't know when some of those guys are getting back, even. And I know that they've tried to replace with some veterans. We'll see how that goes. And they've just paid Jalen Ramsey today. So look, they're taking an investment. They've obviously tried to get pieces to develop this defense, but they've been shaken up and injured. I think once they get some of those guys back healthy and back in the game, they'll be better off. But for now, I think to start the season, they're going to struggle still defensively.
Yeah, definitely. And then let's go to the team that will probably have the best defense in this division and probably the most questioned. That's the New York Jets. Will we see a season of Aaron Rodgers actually in New York this year? Look, we both said it last year. This defense is elite for the Jets. I said it on another show that they have a Super Bowl caliber defense. But the
Agreed.
offense last year was a nightmare once Aaron Rodgers went down. Now he's back. You hopefully something good can happen there. You have a healthy Breece Hall. They drafted Braylon Allen, who looked really good in the preseason. You have Garrett Wilson. You signed Mike Williams, a great jump ball receiver with Allen Lazard. They tried to rebuild this O-line at least some bit. So, I mean, look, this has got to be the year for Robert Saleh. If this is not the year, I mean, I'm a big Robert Saleh guy, but it will be hard to keep his job in New York if they do not have a successful season this year.
Agreed. I think if Robert Saleh was coaching the Panthers and they were having the kind of success that he's been having over the last couple of years, having the season that he's been having, he'd be safe. His seat would not be. It might be a little warm, but he'd be all right. But look, you're playing in a big national spotlight in New York, biggest city in the entire country. Fans are watching, and if you can't perform in New York, and just like in any other sport, they're going to find somebody else. If you can't meet the crazy high, insane expectations that the fans set every year, you're going to be on the hot seat. So I'm with you. I like Robert Saleh. But yeah, how many more seasons of not making the playoffs or is this team going to be able to have with Robert Saleh at the helm? Uh, I I like the way they've built this offense. I think going out and getting Mike Williams was a massive upgrade. And as much as talented as Mekhi Becton was, I think parting ways with him was just the best decision they could make. I think he's going to be great. I think he can be great, but he has never been healthy in his Jets career. And it just would kill them to bring him back under any kind of circumstances when they really need to solidify those tackles, especially now that Rodgers had the huge injury last year. They really need guys they can trust to keep him clean and avoid injury. But like you said, this defense is great, and it looked like it was getting even greater with Hassan Reddick, and now he doesn't want to play there anymore, and he hasn't even played a regular season game yet. So I'm worried about maybe some of the topsy turvy, nature. What Obviously, it has something to do with contract disputes. But look, if one guy starts to get disgruntled and he hasn't even played yet, could that trickle out throughout the team the longer that Hassan Reddick's there and either unhappy or, before he gets traded?
I mean, who knows what's going to happen there with that? And then look, let's just face the fact here with the New England Patriots. This is the start of a rebuild. There ain't nothing else to really say about the Patriots there. Drake May, we'll see what he does this year and we'll evaluate next year. But there are virtually zero expectations for the Patriots entering this year. Can we agree on that?
Yeah. The only thing I'll say is that, look, there are two kinds of teams that draft rookie quarterbacks. The teams that start rookie quarterbacks from the very beginning are teams that are looking to, find some success, find their footing, get guys ready as soon as possible, and, hope to be a contender, a playoff team, maybe. Just kind of give him, a bunch of opportunities on the field. And then you've got a team like what the Patriots are doing this year. They're going to start Jacoby Brissett for at least week one, and then they'll bring Drake May in a little bit later in the season. And to me, that says we're not super worried about Drake May making leaps and bounds on the field, and we're not super worried about making the playoffs at least right away. Right now, we want to make sure he knows the playbook. We want to make sure he knows the offense. We want to make sure he's comfortable. And until then, we'll let Jacoby Brissett take a beating until he's ready to go. And so I don't think that there's anything wrong with either strategy, but it does kind of show the mindset of a team. And I think that, teams that bench their quarterbacks or rookie quarterbacks at the beginning of the season to give them more time to kind of develop, I think those are teams that are not so concerned about making the playoffs and competing. And like you said, there's just not a lot of expectations. We'll see, and we'll talk about Drake May, as the season goes on and coming into next year. But the Patriots are probably not going to do too much this year.
Let's now move to the AFC North, and we've already talked on the Steelers. We've already talked on the Ravens. So really, there's only two teams we got to talk about. Number one is the Cincinnati Bengals, and I'll just say it flat out as someone who plays against them. If Joe Burrow is healthy, this team is a Super Bowl contender year in and year out. If he is healthy, this is a Super Bowl contending roster. I don't know after this year because all the rumors of T. Higgins and Jamar Chase contract-wise. How will that play out eventually? But for this season, if he is healthy, they are, in my personal opinion, this is not Austin's opinion, this is just this Austin's opinion. If he is healthy and their roster is able to all play, this is the only team in the AFC, in my opinion, that can compete with the Kansas City Chiefs.
I'm going to agree with you on a lot of this. I think they're a Super Bowl contender when Burrow's healthy. This might be the last year. I mean, not the last year ever, but this might be, within the next couple of years, they might not get beat next year, like you said. A lot of contract disputes kind of up in the air with some of these guys. But when I look at Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, I thought the whole reason they didn't want to pay T. Higgins so much money was because they wanted to pay that money to Jamar Chase. And now they're not paying the money to Jamar Chase. So you got to pay one of those guys. One of those guys you've got to keep. I think you want to keep the better guy in Jamar Chase. I can understand that. And he has the better chemistry with Joe Burrow. They've known each other for a while now. But at the end of the day, this is going to be one of the best teams in the NFL. They're going to be so much fun to watch. And if Joe Burrow's healthy, look out. These Bengals are going to be playoff bound, and they're going to push everybody to their limits.
Absolutely. And then for the Browns, I mean, I don't want to say last year was a fluke season because obviously they are talented and that, but it was just a weird year last year. The amount of injuries this team had. In comes the elite Joe Flacco to save the day near the end of the regular season. And now you're coming into it. No Joe Flacco. Deshaun Watson supposedly will start. I don't know how many games he'll actually play this year. But I'm just curious if they can repeat that magic from last year, because to me, based on all the injuries, it kind of felt like a fluke playoff run, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, it was really just kind of capitalizing on the lack of expectations almost. Like, it was almost like teams were coming into these games like, oh, it's the Browns. They're broken. They're beaten. We're going to beat them. But I think a lot of that comes down to having Joe Flacco at quarterback, just the experience, the veteran leadership. He was able to come in and kind of run this offense, and that's what I was really impressed with. The big question I have, like you said, Deshaun Watson should be coming back and starting. And Deshaun Watson has never looked like he's had that kind of control of this Browns offense. He's never looked that comfortable or confident in this offense. And that's a guy who's supposed to be a dual threat guy, can run, can throw. And Joe Flacco can't do that. And he really had a lot of success. So, I just don't know. I'm not super sold on the Browns. I'm not convinced. Look, they've always got a fierce defense. Myles Garrett is a tough, tough guy to stop. And he's kind of has that Aaron Donald impact. He gets in, he disrupts a lot of plays, and he makes a lot of problems for offenses. But I just don't know how well this offense is going to play. I honestly think this team might be better if they let Jameis have the reins. But we'll see as the season goes on.
I think everyone would like that. And yeah, Myles Garrett, absolutely elite. Second best defensive player in football, absolutely no doubt. But now let's get to the AFC South, and let's get to this man's crowning achievement from last year. If you all remember, they called him crazy. I even thought he was crazy. I'll admit it. I thought he was crazy for picking the Texans to win the AFC South last year. And Austin, they have only upgraded this roster since this last season. Safe to say that expectations are probably the highest they've been in Houston maybe ever since they became an NFL franchise.
Yeah, look, you look in the dictionary next to the word rebuild. It's a picture of the Houston Texans last year. Exactly how a rebuild is done. Look, and I don't want to hear any euphonies talking about the 2017 Boston Celtics. That's what we call a jump-started rebuild. They used draft picks and assets to acquire solid veterans, and they drafted well. This is a team that almost exclusively drafted this team, put it together, and succeeded. I was incredibly impressed with the team. They exceeded my expectations, and I had them going to the AFC Championship game last year. But just to actually see it come to fruition was honestly incredible. Look, I like this team this year. Adding Stephon Diggs, one of the best receivers in the NFL. Adding Danielle Hunter, one of the best edge rushers in the NFL. This team took it seriously, built on this team. They know what they've got right now. Strike while the iron's hot. You've got 5 years on a rookie contract with a quarterback that you're paying him next to nothing. And look, they've already capitalized on year one. They made the playoffs. They made the divisional round. They almost went to the AFC Championship game. Now you upgrade and you look to make a further run in the playoffs. Absolutely textbook and genius from the front office of the Houston Texans.
Masterclass indeed. Of course, now let's talk about the next team, the team that also went over expectations, I think. That's the Indianapolis Colts. A team, Anthony Richardson goes down after the first 3 or 4 games of the year. Gardner Minshew comes in. People don't know what to think. And they are a catch on a 4th and 1 away from maybe being what the Texans were and hosting a playoff game against the Browns. But look, coming into this year with the Colts, Anthony Richardson's really the main question. And that's really been the question for the Colts since a certain someone retired. A solid defense, solid running game. The offensive line is sort of kind of transitioning right now, so maybe them. But the quarterback position, are we going to get a full season of Anthony Richardson developed? And that's my only concern with the Colts is what is a full season of Anthony Richardson going to look like after what happened last year?
Yeah, I agree. And obviously, look, he had a lot of success playing quarterback last year, and he was definitely, for those early games, a big reason they were winning. Obviously, Gardner Minshew came out, closed out the season, and was phenomenal. I honestly hope that the Colts spent a lot of time with Anthony Richardson, coaching him up on how to better take care of himself. Look, you don't want to tell the guy to stop running because that's part of what makes Anthony Richardson so great. But you've got to tell him how to slide, how to get out of bounds, take care of yourself. He took too many hits last year, and obviously it cost him the season because of it. I really hope maybe he was able to sit down with Lamar Jackson, another guy who kind of had that issue when he first came into the NFL. He wanted to run all the time. He did it in college, and he was fast enough, quick enough, agile enough to just get around anybody in college. But in the NFL, it's not that easy to navigate through an NFL defense. And Lamar Jackson learned the hard way. Hopefully guys like that can help him learn how to better take care of himself. But look, if Anthony Richardson's healthy, this is going to be a fun and exciting team to watch in Indianapolis. Look, I wasn't crazy about the Anthony Richardson pick, how high he was. I thought he showed flashes at Florida, but he kind of struggled to throw the ball consistently, in my opinion. But he came out, he shut me up, he played well. I like this Colts team if they can keep themselves healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully another team that we'll see maybe compete in that AFC South. You got the Jacksonville Jaguars, who throughout most of last year was one of the top seeds in the AFC. And then, I don't care what people say, this is the reason they failed. You stomped on the terrible towel. You stomped on the terrible towel. Bad things happen to you.
Don't do it.
You finished terrible on the year. A big thank you to the Tennessee Titans as always. But look, this is a talented roster with a talented quarterback. Can they just not choke it away this year? That's literally the only question. They have the talent there. They have a solid head coach who can develop a quarterback. The only question mark to me with this team, and something we both agreed on in the NFL draft, was their secondary. But they didn't address that. They went out and got wide receiver. So, I mean, it really looks like they should compete. They just got to be able to finish the season this year.
Yeah, and kind of what you hinted at, secondary is my biggest concern for this team. It's been the concern for a couple of years now. They've tried to fix it with guys like C.J. Henderson, and they just have not had a lot of success. And it is disappointing because they've got a lot of solid young talent on the defensive line and in the linebacking core. But that secondary is just not good. I just don't know how else to put it. But a big thing that I think also hurt their season last year was they had a stretch where Trevor Lawrence was hurt and CJ Beathard was playing. And that's just not the ideal way to run your team. Not everybody can be Joe Flacco or Gardner Minshew and just be such a wonderful backup quarterback. And not that CJ Beathard was bad, but this team missed Trevor Lawrence. They really need this team healthy. And I would look for this team to maybe go out and make a surprise trade and upgrade that secondary at some point in this season, especially if we get to around the trade deadline and there's this 3-team race for the division. I could definitely see them trying to make an upgrade. That way they can steal this division away. But yeah, this is a good team. They need to take another step though.
But now let's move to the last team in the AFC South. That's the Tennessee Titans here. And look, they made a lot of adjustments in the offseason, to say the least, but they believe in Will Levis now. He's the starter in the year, rightfully so. To me, what I like they did, they upgraded this defense. They made a lot of moves for this defense. And I think this defense will be probably the thing that could maybe carry them to somewhat compete in this AFC South. But what is Will Levis going to look like in his first full year as a starter? That's the question with this offense. And of course, no Derrick Henry in Tennessee anymore.
Yeah, getting Tony Pollard. It would be interesting to see kind of how they use Tony Pollard in the offense. But look, they've got Will Levis. They're certainly going to lean on passing the ball a little bit more now. But like you said, improving the defense, that's going to allow Will Levis to make some mistakes and grow while still having a solid defense that can maybe limit the damage that those mistakes do. But with Will Levis and just the Titans in general, the best thing that they've done, I think, is for the first time in 2 or 3 years, there's no uncertainty about the quarterback position. They know who's going to be the guy. They know who's going to start the season, and barring injury, Will Levis will be that guy. Last year, it was Tannehill. Was it going to be Tannehill? Was it going to be, or 2 years ago, was it going to be Tannehill? Was it going to be Malik Willis? All this talk. And, that just everybody. And then you have Tannehill saying, it's not my job to be Malik Willis's mentor, not my job to take care of him. He's got to get his own. So, look, things didn't sound like they were going so hot then. Then you draft Will Levis, and now you're wondering, Tannehill, Willis, Levis, who's it going to be? Eventually it shakes out Will Levis, and they've just kind of answered those questions. No more Tannehill, no more Malik Willis. This team's got its answer, and Will Levis, and I think that's going to help this team find its identity a little bit more and give everybody a little more confidence going out every week.
Definitely. And then let's move to the Chiefs division. I mean, the AFC West. Sorry, wording there. We've already the Chiefs, let's just say it. They looked exactly like I think we all expected them to last night. Nothing else really to add there. really nothing to say about the Broncos other than really develop Bo Nix. Maybe that's really one of the main things. The two teams that I think we need to really focus on as maybe seeing what they could be are the Raiders and the Chargers. The Raiders, praise them. They made the right move. They didn't let an interim coach walk out the door that did a good job. Antonio Pierce, now the full-time head coach there. And listen, they upgraded this defense, getting Christian Wilkins. The defense will be incredible in Las Vegas, no doubt. What is it going to be without Josh Jacobs? And what will it be with Gardner Minshew being the starter for presumably the season, unless Aiden O'Connell gets a chance? Offense is the name of the game there in Las Vegas.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I just felt like this Raiders team didn't attack quarterback hard enough. And look, it's kind of tough with the way this draft went. Michael Penix going 8 really shook up how teams like the Raiders thought this first round was going to go for quarterbacks. And it definitely cost them an opportunity to get a quarterback. People were just far more aggressive moving up and willing to spend more draft picks to get guys. And so I don't necessarily think they made a mistake not spending more assets, but they just didn't really attack. The one thing we did see, Gardner Minshew did have a pretty good season. If he ends up being the guy or ends up needing to become the guy, if Aiden O'Connell doesn't start so hot, they can have a certain level of confidence there with Gardner Minshew. The thing I do like about this offense, even though they lost Josh Jacobs, they knew what they had on this team. Zamir White, another one of those Georgia Bulldogs. Around Thanksgiving, when this team started to turn it around, Zamir White was at the forefront of it, really starting to establish himself running the ball. I remember watching that Chiefs game. Look, they didn't throw the ball that well on Thanksgiving, but they ran the ball well and they won that game. So I think having a guy like Zamir White and not paying that money to try and bring back Josh Jacobs was a big move for them. I think they know what they've got with another talented Georgia Bulldogs running back. I think quarterback is the biggest question for this team. But if Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew can ring the bell, rise to the challenge, man, this could be a really fun and exciting team to maybe sneak into the wild card and give somebody some trouble in the first round.
Definitely. And then our last team, we're going to talk about the Los Angeles Chargers, who, look, let's face it, a lot of changes happened this offseason. Let's just address the obvious one. Jim Harbaugh is now the head coach there, coming over from Michigan, winning a national title. They made a lot of changes in the offseason, letting go of a lot of pieces on this offense. Obviously, they have a new running back room. Austin Eckler is gone. They brought over Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. And it's going to be an interesting team. They went on the O-line in the draft, of course. It'll be interesting to see how Joe Alt does. I think he has great potential. But, this is kind of a wait and see, because with Jim Harbaugh, the turnaround he had with the Niners was insanely quick there, which was absolutely incredible. This is a difference, though, with this Chargers team. They have a lot of old pieces on the defense that have some questions there. This offense, wide receiver room, really not there. The running back room, a couple of guys that have not been proven the last couple of seasons. And an offensive line that's got a couple of young guys with Justin Herbert. I know he's a great worker and can turn things around really quickly, but this will probably be his best challenge to see if that truly can happen still.
Yeah, I completely agree. But I will say this about Jim Harbaugh. The fast turnaround with the Niners, he's got half the work done for him having a franchise quarterback. Now it's about putting some pieces around Justin Herbert. But like you said, got some older veteran pieces on defense. I was surprised to still see Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack as members of the Chargers after letting go of guys like Mike Williams, Austin Eckler, and Keenan Allen. I thought that would just be the natural progression to really start opening some stuff up. But to me, that tells me that they believe in this defense. They think they can win with this defense. And now it's just about finding the right pieces for Justin Herbert. Ordinarily, you'd look at a situation like this and say, a team is getting ready to rebuild. But with Justin Herbert, there's not a whole lot of rebuilding that needs to be done. I think this team should try its best to compete and look at any opportunity to grab bigger assets on the offensive end for Justin Herbert.
Absolutely. But enough talk about teams, Austin. Let's get to our season predictions here. And we're going to start with our division winners. And let's start in the order we went, the NFC East, like we talked about. No repeat winner. the Dallas Cowboys won it last year. I think we both know where this is leading. At least for me, do you have the Philadelphia Eagles winning this NFC East?
No, I've got the Washington. No, I'm just kidding. I've got the Philadelphia Eagles winning this division. I think they did the right things this offseason to get this team back on track. Another move that I didn't really mention just quickly was that I like that they brought back CJ Gardner Johnson. Uh, I thought that he was a really solid piece for them 2 years ago. They let him walk to the Lions. He got hurt and kind of struggled in Detroit, and now he's back. He was a really vocal leader and kind of an exciting spark plug in that secondary. And now I think getting him back is definitely going to be an upgrade for them. I like the moves the Eagles have made. I think they're going to win this division.
I do as well. Although I'm just saying, I think the Commanders, if Jane Daniels can be like an RG3 rookie year, you never know. You never know.
Maybe.
But now let's move to this man's division, the NFC North. There are three teams, in my opinion, that can compete in this division. I'm sure this man believes it too. The question is on everyone's mind, Austin, are your Chicago Bears going to win the NFC North with Caleb Williams this year?
No, I think that's too unfair of expectations. I'm trying to be more level-headed about making these decisions. I think the Bears are going to be good. I think they'll be better than they were last year. I think they'll compete for a playoff spot, but I don't think they're going to win this division. I think the Packers are going to have a pretty decent season, but the team I really think is going to win this division is the Lions. Like we said earlier, if this team doesn't win 12 games this season, it will be a disappointment. And right now, looking ahead to the season, I think this is the clear, no doubt favorite to win the NFC North, Detroit Lions.
Yeah, right there with you. Easy choice. Although I'm interested to see how the Packers do. Last year, the Lions dominated at Lambeau Field. Whenever those two face off, it'll be interesting. I'm with you. The Bears, I think, will compete for a playoff spot. Now, let's get to the land of the mid, the NFC South. Austin, who rises from the ashes of the mid and excels into hosting a playoff game this year?
Yeah, like we said, I think there are two teams that I really have expectations to get out of the mid and actually be a competitive team, maybe compete for one of those top spots in the NFC. But I'm going to give it to Tampa Bay. I think they're bringing a lot of pieces back. There aren't a lot of question marks on this team. I think it's just about, getting those guys back out there and doing what you did last year. With Atlanta, they brought in a lot of good pieces, but are these guys going to work well together? Are they going to mesh well together? That's a question that remains to be answered. I think it's a little bit safer to pick the Bucks, so I'm going to.
Yeah, it is definitely safer to go with the Bucks. But I've drank the Atlanta Kool-Aid for the past 2 years. So why don't I just drink the Atlanta Kool-Aid a third time? I'll take Atlanta to win the NFC South here.
You're sick.
I'm interested to see how it works. Talent-wise, they should win this division. I'm just saying this on repeat. It's just like with the Saints salary cap situation. It's me on repeat saying the Falcons have no reason to not win this division. I mean, it's just a broken record. But now let's move to the NFC West here. And this seems like a pretty clear Niners pick. Although, do you possibly see the Seahawks or Rams maybe making a sneaky division title away from the Niners?
I think that coming down the stretch of the season, I think, the Niners always tend to, lose a couple games that they shouldn't. And that just happens in the NFL. You don't see undefeated teams winning Super Bowls. It just doesn't happen. There's a higher level of talent. But I think Seattle will keep it close this year, but I definitely don't see anybody but San Francisco taking this division. And if anybody else does, San Francisco has made a grave mistake.
Yeah, I don't know how anyone could say anyone but the Niners there. But enough talk there. Now let's get to the bold ones, the teams that are going to make the wild card, not win their division, but make the postseason. Austin, who are your 3 NFC wild card teams?
Oh, this is tough. I'm going to go Cowboys. I think that they're not going to have the greatest season ever, but I think they'll win 9 or 10 games probably. And Dak will do just enough to earn a contract extension that nobody else thinks he should have except Jerry Jones. I'm going to go the Green Bay Packers, and then I'm going to go the Chicago Bears.
And I had a feeling.
I'm going to stick them in there in that last wild card spot.
Yeah. For me, same. I have the Bears sneaking into that final wild card spot. I have the Packers making it. Although a bold one here, I got Seattle making it into the wild card
I
round this
like
year.
it. I wanted to put Seattle.
I was choosing between them and the Rams. But I think the defense in Seattle with Mike McDonald there will carry them to that wild card spot at least. I think they'll be able to get in. But now let's head over to the AFC. Let's start in the AFC East. Austin, are you still on the Bills bandwagon here? We going Buffalo?
This has been maybe the hardest day in my entire life. This is not the type of situation I ever want to be in. I never want to have to do this, but I have to, in good conscience, go in a different direction. I've got to go with the Miami Dolphins to win the AFC East this year.
Oh, oh,
It
so many
hurts.
hearts just broke across the country, Austin.
Oh,
Oh,
terrible! It's the worst day of my life.
but for me, there's questions with the Bills, questions with the Dolphins. I know you may not like it. I'm going to buy the hype on the New York Jets. I'm going to take the Jets to win this AFC East. I think they are the most balanced team in the division, and I think that's what wins them the division. Not by a lot, but I think that wins them the division this year, being the more balanced one. As long as Aaron Rodgers, knock on wood, he plays a whole season actually. So
I won't knock on wood. I just won't do it. But do you want to hear the saddest part? I think the Jets also have a better chance than the Bills.
but you just couldn't do it. You couldn't do it, huh?
I just couldn't put the Bills to win this division. Ugh.
And you know what? That's fair. But now let's move to the AFC North here. And listen, the AFC North is probably the toughest division in football to decide on a winner here. Who you got coming out of this AFC North?
I'm gonna go with old reliable, the Cincinnati Bengals. Like you said, this is one of the best teams in the NFL when Joe Burrow's healthy. I'm hoping for a healthy Joe Burrow year, so I'm gonna go with the Cincinnati Bengals here.
Of course, I got to go with the Pittsburgh. No, I can't do it.
Can't do it.
I want to temptingly, but no, I got to go with the Bengals as well. Like I said, when Joe Burrow's healthy, they are a top competitor in the AFC. Period. But now let's move to the AFC South, the land where this man, of course, predicted the winner this year or last year with the Texans. You're going to have a surprise winner this year, Austin, or are you confident in your team from last year?
It's only a surprise if you think that I'm going to go against the Texans. No, I'm going to go with the Houston Texans. I liked them last year, and I like them this year for a lot of the same reasons, but they made so many improvements to make this team a contender. I love what they've done. I've got to buy into it. Houston Texans are winning this division.
Yeah, I'm with you. Let's just do real quick. Texans there, no doubt to me. I think the Jaguars will probably be the next closest competitor,
Agreed.
but I think the Texans do win it. And then the AFC West, Austin, let's just do it real quick. Chiefs, I'm assuming.
Chiefs.
Yeah.
Bad face.
One can only hope for some fun in the AFC West.
Yeah,
you remember 2 years ago when we thought the AFC West was going to be like the greatest division ever?
It was supposed to be, and it wasn't.
It was not even close.
4 really good quarterbacks in that division, and it was terrible.
It was awful. But now let's move to the AFC wildcard teams. And this is the toughest in the AFC. It's always a stacked conference. Who are your 3 teams making it to the AFC postseason?
I think the Ravens will be my top wildcard team. I like the Jaguars hanging out at the next spot. And oof, this is so tough. I think I gotta go with Buffalo sneaking in to the last spot.
I knew you were going to put him in there. I had a feeling. I was like, he's either doing Buffalo or he's going to do the Steelers. I was thinking one of those two.
I can't not put Buffalo. I just can't not put them in.
They would probably be the best 7 seed in the history of the NFL since they got the 7 seed. So for mine, I'm completely biased here. I have the Ravens making it, obviously. I think the Steelers at least make the wild card round. If they win, that's a totally different story. My 7 seed, Austin, is going to absolutely shock you. I don't think you're ready for it.
I'm not.
I got the Tennessee Titans in as the 7 seed in the AFC.
Wow, after you
I
just told me you thought the
Yeah,
Jaguars were
yeah,
going to be the
exactly. That's
second
what we
best team.
call flipping the script on a man. We
You
lead
just
him the
lied.
entire wrong way, and we go with the Tennessee Titans.
Okay, I like it. I'm shocked because you
Yeah.
lied, but
I like the defense. I like the improvements they made there to help Will Levis, and I think it'll be enough for them to get the 7 seed. And like we talk about every year with that 7 seed, it's basically like a you don't belong here, basically, is what that 7 seed
yeah,
is. And that any team that gets that 7 seed, that was the Steelers last year. I mean, come on.
that's true.
Um, but now, Austin, let's get to the ones that interest people. We had 2 years ago, I made the bold claim for an NFC championship game pick, and somehow, some way, I somehow got that right. I don't know how. But now, what are your NFC and AFC championship games looking like, sir?
All right, my AFC championship is my Houston Texans versus the Cincinnati Bengals. My
Okay.
NFC championship is the San Francisco 49ers facing off against the Philadelphia Eagles. It's
Oh,
so hard to not take those two teams that are definitely going to be, at least looking on from the season, those look like the two best teams in the NFC once again. It's just so hard for me to not say that those teams are going to go.
that is very fair. So for me, I went probably the most boring picks you could have for both of these. I had a Lions Niners NFC championship, except it will be in Detroit. That's my extra one. It'll be in Detroit this year.
Okay.
And then the AFC, listen, if it does happen, it'll be cinema. We'll see them play week 2. I got Chiefs and Bengals in Cincinnati this time, though.
Okay.
So now, Austin, the question we want to know, what is your Super Bowl matchup, sir? And who's your Super Bowl winner here?
I'm going to go with the Houston Texans versus the San Francisco 49ers. And I've got the Houston Texans taking it home. And my guy, CJ Stroud, Super Bowl MVP.
All right, the Houston Texans winning their first Super Bowl ever. So for me, I've got two teams matching up for trying to win their first Lombardi. I've got a Lions Bengals Super Bowl here.
Okay.
I mean, you got the matchup of the cats. You got the Lions and you got the Bengals. So to me, though, the difference comes down the secondary. And I think the additions that the Lions made, the Terry on that secondary could be the difference. I'm going to take the Detroit Lions to win the Super Bowl this year. So there you go, folks. You got a Houston Texans, Detroit Lions Super Bowl winners. If you don't think that, comment below who you think your Super Bowl winner is going to be. But Austin, before we get into the awards predictions to seal the show, give me what we've always done, your first NFL coach to be fired. You hit it right on the nail with Matt Rhule 2 years ago. What do you got this year?
I was thinking really hard on this. So hard on this before we got on, like 20 minutes before. I was like, I've got to nail this pick. And now I've got to remember who I was about to pick. So give me 1 second as I look at these teams.
I'm going to say mine first for you.
Go ahead, but I think
Okay.
I'm ready.
So for mine, I was choosing between two guys. One, I don't think he deserves it, but I think it could happen. The one I didn't choose was Brian Daboll. Not that he deserves it, just because I think it's just the way things could go for the Giants if bad things happen.
Agreed.
But the one I ended up choosing is a guy who I honestly don't think should be a head coach, Dennis Allen of the New Orleans Saints. I really think he'll be the first one gone. If this team continues to struggle and just be barely 500, I think they could quickly get off him. Although Nick Sirianni, I think, could be a wild card if the Eagles come out of the gate struggling.
All right. Well, I was also choosing between two guys. And I was just about to say Dennis Allen, but for the sake of making things fun, I'll go with my other pick, even though it will kind of contrast the playoff predictions I just made. But so I will explain why I think it. Now, Dennis Allen, for all the same reasons, I think he should be the guy to go. I think he's the least qualified person to be an NFL head coach right now. This guy I was kind of on a Brian Daboll train of thought with you. He's a guy that I think doesn't necessarily deserve to be fired, but it's the way things could shake out. My big thing is that he's been there for a while and he was exciting. He started to shape this team up. They've been competitive, but now they're starting on what seems to be kind of a downward swing. And I think that if he doesn't get after it and they maybe have a slow start this year, he could be out the door and they replace him for somebody, who could help them compete now because they need to. And that's Sean McDermott of the Buffalo Bills. I like Sean McDermott. I think he's a good coach, but I think if the Bills super duper struggle to start the season, they'll look to make somebody else the head coach to try and stay competitive.
Wow. I am not going to lie. That is not the name I thought you were going to say at all. Wow.
Who do you think
what
I
a
was going
pick
to
there.
say?
I'm not going to lie. I kind of thought you would go Dennis Allen first off as well.
Well, that
But
was
honestly,
my first pick, but you said it, so I went different.
Yeah. So I really felt like you were going to go Dennis Allen. After that, I mean, I thought maybe you would go maybe with a Mike McCarthy of the Cowboys. That's one I could see very much as well. So, but those are our picks. Judge them as you will. Austin, let's get to awards. Who's your MVP for this NFL season?
MVP for this NFL season. I'm going to go with something that I think could have been said about last year and maybe a couple of years ago. And I'm just going to try and speak it into existence. I'm going to say Christian McCaffrey is the NFL MVP. It's a bit of a bold one because I know that they basically made the MVP the best quarterback award, and then Offensive Player of the Year is really, the other offensive position player that should be the MVP. So I'm going to go with a bold one. I think Christian McCaffrey is going to do enough this season to convince people he deserves to be the first non-quarterback MVP in a long time.
Yeah. Let's just say right now, he should have won it last year. Let's just get that out of the way. My MVP, I was a year early on this last year. I'm hoping this is the year I actually get it right. Considering I was a year early on Lamar Jackson and then he won MVP the next year. I'm going to go with Joe Burrow to take home MVP this year. I think if he doesn't win MVP, I think he could win Comeback Player of the Year. So I think it'll be either one of those two awards he'll take home, but I'll take Joe Burrow for MVP. I'll go ahead and spoil Offensive Player of the Year for mine. Similar to the reason you just talked about. I have Christian McCaffrey winning it solely because they don't give it MVP to non-position players. What about your Offensive Player of the Year?
Ooh, my Offensive Player of the Year. I'm going to go with Tyreek Hill. I think that in a world where Christian McCaffrey takes home the MVP, they're probably not also going to give him the Offensive Player of the Year. So I'm going to go with Tyreek Hill. I think he's a talented wide receiver. He was voted the number one player in the NFL. I think a lot of eyes are going to be on him. I think he's going to perform. So I'm going to go with Tyreek Hill, Offensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, real quick. All right. Defensive Player of the Year. Absolute bias when it comes to this pick. Absolute bias for me. TJ Watt. Let's get it out of the way. You have no bias here, sir. So feel free to make your pick for Defensive Player of the Year.
I want to go a little bit bolder, a little bit more confident with this one, but I just don't see it happening, but I'm going to say it anyway. I'm going to go with Fred Warner of the San Francisco 49ers.
I like that. That's a good one. I like that.
I really like Fred Warner. I think he's a talented, obviously a solid guy. Maybe he'll get a little more attention this year, and I'll be right. But I wanted to go with somebody. I feel like, you're picking a defensive lineman every year, and so I want to change it up, give us a little bit of more diversity there.
I like it. I will say a wild card I think could be Sauce Gardner for the Jets. They could go corner.
Yeah,
I like that.
I like that.
All right, but now let's move to Offensive Rookie of the Year. Are you going with number one pick Caleb Williams for your Offensive Rookie of the Year?
Yeah, I won't waste everybody's time. I actually do think this is going to be a close race. I think he'll be competing with a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Neighbors. But I think Caleb Williams, one thing he's going to have on his side is that the Bears' rookie quarterback records and their regular quarterback records for a season are not super difficult to achieve. And so if he has a good season, he'll probably shatter all of those records. And so making all this history in his rookie year, I think would be a major advantage with voters in the Offensive Rookie of the Year category.
Yeah, I'll just be upfront. I was going to go with Caleb Williams, but I knew you were going to go with Caleb Williams probably. So I'm going to take Jane Daniels instead. I'll go second pick with him. I think he could have potential to be a big year for the Commanders if things go right there in Washington, obviously. Defensive rookie of the year. I'll go ahead and get mine out of the way. I've hyped him up. I've loved him before the NFL draft process. I think Jared Verse will come in and have a really solid rookie season for the Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah, I like that. I'm gonna go with the guy who I also really like, in Dallas Turner with the Minnesota Vikings. I think with all the bad things that have happened with Minnesota, they're not going to be a very good team. So I think he's going to make some headlines, make a name for himself, be that one bright spot on the Vikings. And that way, when Defensive Rookie of the Year voting comes around, people are like, well, the Vikings were bad, but this guy was good.
Yeah, absolutely. But now, comeback player of the year. Of course, there are multiple guys up for this award. I'll just go and get mine out of the way because I know this man is not going to like it at all. I got Aaron Rodgers winning it. If I have the Jets winning the AFC East, I feel like I got to give it to him if Joe Burrow wins MVP. So I'm sorry, I got it out of the way real quick. So
Yeah.
you may have the floor with your comeback player of the year.
I'm gonna go with Tre'Davious White. He's a guy we know just how talented he is. He's had several seasons in his career that he's lost due to a season-ending injury. I think 2 ACLs and an Achilles. So hopefully he comes back this year. He shines in a Rams defense that could really use his presence. And if he does, I think they'll have no choice but to give him the comeback player of the year.
All right. And then our last award before we do just a few game picks, since this has been already a long episode, we'll go coach of the year here. Who you got here?
I'm gonna go with D'Amico Ryans. I forgot his name for a second. I think if the Texans are going to make this big run that I've got them going on, I think D'Amico Ryans is going to be at the center of it.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to take Raheem Morris of the Falcons against them. Where that if I'm high on the Falcons, I might as well ride with the rookie head coach that will hopefully turn them around. I'll take Raheem Morris there. All right, let's get into a few game picks, and obviously tonight the Packers and the Eagles going head to head in Brazil. Since this game is basically happening in probably an hour or two from us finishing this recording, we won't give an actual pick for it, but hypothetical, who would you go with, Eagles or Packers in this one?
I'd go with the Eagles in this one probably. I think just coming into the season, they're the better team. Obviously, we don't really have a ton to go off of. I think this would be a really good and close game, especially being played in Brazil. There's not going to be a whole lot of home field advantage in this game. So I'm going to go with the Eagles, just, knowing nothing going into the season.
That's fair. I'll take the Packers as my hypothetical one because I think the Eagles secondary is still kind of young with the guys they brought in. I think Jordan Love could be the difference there. I'll take my hypothetical for Green Bay. But let's get to some Sunday picks here. We're going to make 4 picks here, and we're going to start with the best, in my opinion, the best of the 12 o'clock slate. You got Miami and Jacksonville, 2 Florida teams facing off head-to-head here. 2 teams that were not clutch near the end of the season last year. Dolphins, Jaguars, who you got here?
I'm going to go Dolphins here. Kind of like I was saying before, it's hard to kind of frame who's going to beat who without really just kind of considering who you think the better team is right now. And obviously, that's kind of how you make your picks all the time, but just not seeing anybody. I like the Dolphins. I like what they've done with this roster. I think Jacksonville's secondary scares me. And with a team that has got so much offensive firepower, especially at the wide receiver position, I think it's not in your best interest to have a weak secondary.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to take the Dolphins with you, I think, for that exact same reason there. Now let's get to Sunday Night Football. The Lions and the Rams, the rematch from the wild card round, obviously, will be on Sunday Night Football. Expect a big crowd there in Detroit. But do you see the Rams going and pulling off the upset in Detroit?
No, I think the environment's going to be hostile. It'll basically be a playoff game, and the Rams did not win the playoff game in Detroit last year. I think we'll see similar results. Again, I think it'll be a close game, but I think the Lions will kind of run away with it at the end. No Aaron Donald. I think this offense is going to step up and have some of that unexpected success. Like I said before, I think this offense maybe, it's not going to get going 100%, but they're not going to have that same defense to rely on with Aaron Donald. I think that the Lions come out and get the job done in Detroit with that rowdy environment.
I'm going to take Lions as well. I think the home field advantage is key there. And then we'll pick Monday Night Football for our last game here. We got Jets and 49ers on ABC. Really good matchup on Monday Night Football. Hopefully Aaron Rodgers makes it through the entire Monday Night Football game this time. Jets, Niners, who are you taking here?
I'm gonna take the Niners here. I like the Jets. I think they're in a better place. But I think the 49ers, look, there's no questions about this team, at least right now. They're the same team they were last year. They're a great team. We still don't know how some of these new Jets faces are going to play together, even though we know how talented these guys are on their own. So I think the Niners are going to benefit from kind of knowing each other already and having that chemistry.
Yeah, but I want to be a bold man since we agreed on the first two. I'll take the Jets in this one. I'll take the Jets. I'm really just trying to tick you off in this episode, I think.
Yeah. And I didn't
But
know
yeah,
this
I'll
was an
take the
Aaron
Jets.
Rodgers podcast.
Yeah, similar to the Miami Hurricane one for college football.
Yeah.
But no, I think the Jets, I think they could go in if Aaron Rodgers and this offense can play complete. I think they can go in and take and be able to beat the 49ers in a really good game there. But that's going to be it for this NFL season preview episode. If you haven't, tune into the college football episode. Came out yesterday, but obviously next week we're back to that two episode schedule. We're going to have college football come out first, followed by NFL. Most likely to be a Wednesday or Thursday whenever those episodes come out. But that is Austin Hill. I'm Austin Wader. We want to thank y'all for watching.